Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That is Jack back in studio. I am Conrad, and this is the 45 look back at match week 9. Some strange results, as you would expect from this strange season.
Yeah.
Fixtures on top of fixtures on top of fixtures.
Klopp very mad about that. We've seen some of his animated rants about why the scheduling is so bad and why Sky and BT are to blame. But it's been some great action. I think the congestion of fixtures will lead to a lot of upsets, a lot of surprise results. It's football. It's a low scoring sport. There's a lot of surprises, and there were no shortage of them this weekend. I think.
First up, Newcastle, Chelsea. Not much of a surprise here, but Newcastle, they've got to figure out how to move beyond this defend, counter, defend. They're just running for their lives all the time. Steve Bruce has some really good attacking talent available to him. He's not deploying it all at the same time, and when he does deploy it, he's still not really changing his tactics. Meanwhile, Chelsea have really figured out how to defend alongside their scoring, and they've really got Mendy, Werner, Chilwell just seamlessly integrated into this side, and they look really, really good. And Lampard has firm control of what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Today, Chelsea qualifying for the last 16 of the Champions League against Rennes. Finally pronouncing that right. I know it was something you hated a lot.
Across the Atlantic, not the Pacific.
Exactly. And they've been doing really, really well. Edouard Mendy's been great in goal for them, I believe, from Rennes. That's a great transfer for them to really kind of improve their defensive solidity and structure, because not having Kepa in net, he's the most expensive goalie of all time. We don't want to hate the guy. We don't want to hate on him, but he's been poor, and having Mendy has obviously improved Chelsea. For Newcastle, St. Maximin, Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser, they're great attacking talents. It's just there's a bit of a lack of usage of them, as you mentioned. So Newcastle, this is not a terrible result for them. Chelsea, I think, are playing very well. They're on great form. They haven't been knocked down a peg just yet, which we'll see next week against Tottenham. That's going to be the big test of whether or not they're for real, or has it just been they've been beating up the teams that they should beat up, rather than actually making some big waves. This was, as you mentioned, not a surprise, though. This is the probably most straightforward, should have happened, did happen, result of the weekend.
Chelsea now 7 matches unbeaten, above Leicester City on goal difference, 2 points behind Spurs. Newcastle, meanwhile, 11 points in 13th. Next up, we've got City over visiting Spurs. Really a good statement, I think, from Tottenham here. I don't know what's going on with City, but suddenly they can't score. They've only had 5 goals in their last 6 matches. Meanwhile, this was a classic Mourinho performance. Sit back and then attack. And they really frustrated City on every level. Mm-hmm. And City have now dropped 12 points, which is already through 8 matches, which is as many as they dropped in their entire Centurion season in 17 and 18.
Yeah, we mentioned last season every time that they would drop points, or we're saying, wow, this is crazy, Chelsea dropping points again. It's happening again. And Guardiola signed a 2-year contract, so we kind of mocked it a little bit that, 2 more years of this, is it going to be bad for them? But they're missing Sterling, they're missing Aguero. Yes, you're missing talent, but you also should be performing a bit better than you currently are. In terms of how this looks for Spurs, I'm less optimistic than I think you are and a lot of people. I will take a lot of credit. I had them in 3rd in my predictions. People called me crazy, but now I look like a genius because they're considered the 3rd in this running pack of Liverpool,
even though they're
Spurs.
sitting top all of them.
Exactly. Liverpool, Spurs, and City are still considered one of the title favorites, even though they still have not been performing at their level just yet. The issue for them is they haven't really replaced the era of David Silva, Vincent Kompany, Yaya Toure. That golden age of Manchester City football kind of lasted from around 2013 to about 2018, 2019. And those guys have retired. Some of them long gone, like Yaya Toure, moved on. Hasn't really properly replaced it with a new class of talent. It's just been
more so on the leadership side.
Exactly. The leadership thing is the biggest thing that they're lacking. And Spurs have made some great acquisitions. Højbjerg at defensive mid looks like a world beater for them. And while this is not a sustainable result, I love my expected goals, 0.68 for Spurs, which, yes, you have Son and Lo Celso had great goals on the counter, but Man City with 2.07 XG, got to be burying your chances. You only have yourselves to blame because you should, based on the chances created in the match, have won, regardless of the fact that it was a good Mourinho setup. So, again, still very early on in the season, we're barely a quarter of the way through. So whether or not this is going to be where the teams lie in terms of long-term really remains to be seen.
So that's 4 in a row now for Spurs. top of the table, 2 points over Chelsea, who you mentioned they play next. Interesting matchup. Meanwhile, City still sitting 10th on 12 points. They visit, they're home to Burnley next, so hope to get a little bit of health there for them. Next up, Leeds and Arsenal. Leeds really lost a lot of. They could have picked up full 3 here. Should have picked up full 3 here. Did not. Very wasteful. But 25 shots. 25 shots. 4 of them were on target, and 3 of them off the woodwork. But they've really got themselves to blame for not winning. Leno was fantastic for Arsenal. Pepe, idiot for Arsenal. Felt terrible. Arteta lit him up after the match, justifiably.
Yeah.
But this Arsenal team, they just packed it in for the last 40 minutes, and we're lucky not to concede. But Leno was just fantastic for them.
We mention it every week, but every week it looks a bit more awkward. Why is Mesut Ozil not in this side? I mean, yes, you can argue he's a defensive liability, but they don't create chances very well. And yes, Pepe getting the red card was the issue here. You had to concede a lot of pressure. And Leeds should have won the match. They should have buried one of those chances. And this was their issue last season, that they would waste chances on a frequent basis. And this would hurt them in the Premier League when they play against higher quality opposition. They get a point against Arsenal, not a terrible result. But with all those mentioned, as you mentioned, 25 shots, 2 expected goals compared to just the 0.79 for Arsenal, you should be getting the 3 points. And it's impressive for Leeds that you're dominating a side like Arsenal, that you're able to stand toe-to-toe with them even when they were 11 men. But again, got to bury your chances.
It took the decision out of Arteta's hands, right? He's like, all right, I can't attack. I just got to sit back and absorb and hope maybe we can catch him.
And Leno is playing out of his skin. He's been they've got some good goalkeeper coaches, I guess, at Arsenal. We look into that because they had Emiliano Martinez last season when Leno was out with his injury. He did great, made a big money move to Aston Villa. He's still doing great there. And Leno, who was great before his injury, continuing that same great vein of form where he's a great shot stopper. He's good distributing. He's probably the most underrated goalie in the Premier League in terms of, you talk about Ederson and Alisson as the great Brazilians. Lloris has been historically acclaimed for the last decade, it feels like. De Gea has been best goalkeeper in the world several times. Schmeichel's respected because of his father and because of his accomplishments. But Leno has been great for a long time, hasn't won much, hasn't won anything, I don't believe, at Arsenal. But he's getting up there in terms of a guy you should look out for as the long-term staple in this Arsenal side, which came from a bit of an unlikely source in Leno.
So that point gets Arsenal into 11th, 2 points ahead of Leeds in 14th place. Both teams better than their current table position shows them. Next up, Liverpool, Leicester. So we got 10 outfield players out in this one. 6 for Liverpool, 4 for Leicester. But Liverpool looked the better side. So Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Henderson, Thiago, Salah. 6 of your starting 11 out. Meanwhile, Soyuncu, Castagne, Pereira, and Ndidi out for City. But Liverpool, Klopp has his approach so dialed in with his club that he can flex that side, get the right players in, and they still look like champions. Curtis Jones getting a run into the midfield. Neco Williams coming on coming on for the injured Naby Keita, and then James Milner just playing wherever the hell Klopp wants him to play.
He was great.
He's just fantastic. But meanwhile, City missing the players we meant. Not sure what Johnny Evans is doing on that own goal. It was terrible. But not having 3 of your back 4 and trying to play that fluid wing back 5 versus going into a back 4. You can't do that with that talent.
It's very tough. Yeah. You mentioned the own goal. I kind of forgot about it. Liverpool had 4.35 expected goals. That's a crazy amount.
And then you give them a goal.
And you only had 2. Like Liverpool underperformed massively, and it's because Roberto Firmino, it seemed like the ball was magnetically away from the goal for him. He had the one where he was about a centimeter away from scoring. He hit the post.
Unlucky to not have a brace, or at least
good for him that he got the goal. I think that's big. I was looking at the stats beforehand. He has, I believe, he's the second highest goals minus expected goals, so he's one of the worst in terms of converting his chances. I think he has the 6th most expected goals, so he's just in great positions all the time to score goals. Just he hasn't been converting them because he's been woefully out of form. So good for him to get that goal. That's good long term for Liverpool. Losing Naby Keita, it's going to hurt because he's one of my favorite players to watch when he's fit. Big if. He's very rarely fit.
Yeah.
For Leicester, people are saying this is another sign of them being frauds, of not really kind of being there just yet. you're missing 4 of your best players. Liverpool have been dominant. They're missing 6, obviously more than you, but they've spent more. They're more talented. They have a better coach. Leicester shouldn't be panicked too much. Yes, it's frustrating that you weren't able to do well, and you conceded a lot of chances, and you were fortunate not to lose by a lot more goals. But not the end of the world for Leicester. Still a great start to the season. And for Liverpool, this is a phenomenal, perfect result. Clean sheet without your 2 starting center backs, without Trent Alexander-Arnold. As they try and limp their way into the new year to maybe sign a center back for depth and try and get some recovered players, they're just going to hope for the best.
They sit second place on 20 points, just goal difference behind, separating them from Spurs. Leicester now 4th on 18 points. Still a great start for them in the first 9 matches. Liverpool next up, away to Brighton. Leicester home to Fulham. So you'd expect both teams to continue winning form against those sides right now. But then again, we don't really know.
Must wins for them, yeah.
You'll get a Salah back, and I think Leicester will get a little bit healthier heading into that match as well. Last match for us this week, Wolves and Southampton. This could have been 3-3. I think Wolves probably slightly more upset with not getting the points based on the 20 shots, 9 on target against Southampton's 7. Alex McCarthy, very, very good for Southampton in this game. But I just, again, we've said this a couple of times now, especially, with the Leeds, now with Wolves and Southampton, just wasteful, not taking advantage of the opportunities that they had. And the 3 points were there for them to get. It just didn't go their way.
Exactly. And McCarthy, you mentioned him. He's been phenomenal.
Great.
I was watching the highlights of the game just to refresh my memory, and he was making world-class save after world-class save. Eventually did concede, obviously, the one goal for the rebound to, I believe it was Neto. But at the end of the day, he's been great in the sticks for them. And interestingly, we talked about this a bit before about he has the most defensive actions furthest out from the goal. So he's one of the biggest sweeper keepers in the league. So I think I mentioned Leno being an underrated goalie. McCarthy, in his own right, no one talks about him because it's Southampton. Nobody talks about Southampton for the reason that they're not.
5th place.
They're 5th place, though. They're doing phenomenally. So this was a great match. I think both sides could be frustrated to not take away the 3 points, and that is a reason for positive in its own right, that you're being able to stand up against a side who these guys are going to be competing with each other for the entire season for where they want to finish. I think they're going to be trying to finish in the top 8. I mean, Southampton are currently top 5, so they say why not. So it was a great match. This is what makes the Premier League great. These are not typical dominant teams in the Premier League, but they have so much talent, and they have great managers. Great managers. Hasenhüttl and Nuno Espirito Santo, 2 of the better ones in the entire division. So this was, I mentioned it could have been 3-3, but great defensive work and great goalkeeping from Patricio and McCarthy made it just a thrilling 1-1 draw, which, if you mentioned to me a couple years back, Wolves, Southampton, thrilling 1-1 draw to have top of the table implications potentially, I'd say you're a bit crazy, but that's why the league has been so great recently.
So Southampton right now 5th on those 17 points. Wolves just 3 points behind, but sitting 9th. Wolves next up away to Arsenal. Southampton home to United.
That's a great. I would probably preview both of those matches. Going to be absolutely phenomenal ones. Arsenal, can they recover? And Southampton versus United. Which ones are where should they be? Because United bottom of the table, Southampton top.
Flipped right
probably
now.
You would have flipped them at the beginning of the season. So man, it's heating up. There's going to be some great matches.
That'll do it for us for our look at Week 9. Up next, we will take a look at the table scientifically. Not really scientifically. And then we will have a Week 10 preview. But please do comment. Let us know what you think. Like, subscribe. Look for us on the Twitter @the45. Take care now.
Nice.